that.
All right. Welcome to the BigCheese Podcast. My name is Sean Hise. I'm here today with, as usual, Brandon Corbin, our resident AI
Idiot savant.
Jacob Wise, CTO, founder of awesome agency Crafted, which I also happen to work at.
Is that a Get Crafted?
Crafted.
Get Crafted?
No, fuck no.
Sorry. What's the
Crafted.
domain? What's the domain?
Crafted Up.
CraftedUp.
I know. We don't have any money, so we have to use one of those domains that has another word in it.
CraftedUp.com. Check it out.
And we also have our special guest today, James Paden.
Yay.
And today we're going to be talking about a lot of things. A lot of things have been going on. AI strategy, business strategy. Like if you're building an AI product, listen to this podcast because we've got some really good advice for you. But we're going to kick it off today with, we have to, because
WWDC,
the Worldwide
Developer Conference.
Worldwide Developer Conference is started, and all anyone cares about is the keynote, right? Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs used to get up there and whatever, and now it's like this whole video thing because of COVID.
Did you guys watch it? I did.
I watched a lot of it. I didn't catch all of it. And me and my friends' parlance, it's called Apple Church. We'd often sit down and watch it together. We congregate.
Yep.
Really?
So we call it Apple Church. But I had to step out of church a couple times.
Vercel's kind of done the same thing with their conference and their keynote. Like they just panning to different experts and just the production quality. And I mean, you got to give it to them. Like these people are running that business, but they're also amazing at creating content.
Right.
And I don't know that silver hair guy that runs what's his name?
Craig. And I forget what his last name is. Something with an F, I think, like Ferguson or something like that. But that cut scene where he does jump, down. He does the parkour. No, it wasn't him. It was the worst stunt
it's
double
so memed right now.
But I think it had to be on purpose. Like that had to be a cognate. Like they specifically decided, okay, we're gonna make it so it's very clear that this is a stunt double. And there's because there's something funny about that. I will say though that the recordings and watching these, I still do miss Jobs.
Yeah.
Like Jobs you didn't need to have all of these different people. Everybody stands there and they do this weird thing with their knees and their hands. They're like, and so today what we're going to talk. Jobs, he was magical when he would get up there and he would do his thing. So I do miss it. I mean, I think it's cool that they do it as a video and they can produce all of it, but yeah.
They spend the first, I was watching it and I actually created a video where I watched this conference and I had their Robinhood real-time stock chart going at the same time. I haven't shared it, but I was just flipping through and I was taking notes when I was doing it. And their stock started, it didn't tank, right? It was sitting at whatever, 190 something. Right. And, they hadn't mentioned or said the word artificial intelligence, right? So they went through all the updates. They went through all the apps. They went through Apple Watch, Apple OS. They started with Vision Pro. And so Vision Pro 2 is coming out and like, Joe, we're just going to have an 8K screen for you for Mac Extended Display.
I missed the beginning of it, so I had no idea that they even made the announcement that there's another Vision Pro.
No, it's just a Vision Pro OS 2.
Oh, okay.
So they're coming out with a completely new version of it. But in this version, you can just be staring at your Mac and then look up and you get two 4K displays that extend your existing MacBook.
Does anybody here have a Vision?
We had one, so I recently left Expected Behavior, and we were a startup studio. We got a Vision Pro, and then we ended up returning it.
Oh, no.
Because we only bought one. It was really expensive, but you can't share it. So if you want to switch it and give it to someone else to play with,
it's like associated to your account.
You have to reassociate to your account. You have to retrain your eyes. You have to resize it. It's like a 15-minute process.
Right.
And for us, it just wasn't worth it for dinking around and playing.
Right.
And we didn't want just one person to have it. So we just returned it.
That's crazy.
It was incredible, though. It was fun. We all tried it, and our minds were blown. Amazing technology, and then we're like, I don't know what the heck I'd do with this.
Yeah,
someone will make something cool with this someday.
Some of the things that I liked about it, it just doesn't seem that practical. But like the guy's like wearing it in the commercial around his house, and he's like got his grocery list and like all the things set up. I'm like, that's pretty cool. But would I wear that? It just gets to that practicality and the expense.
But again, it eventually is here.
Yeah.
In these small ass glasses that I can just put on, and now I'm having my experience. that piece is like where I see myself getting involved, and not in this like wearing a huge headpiece.
Well, I think that it comes down to the fundamental technology, and I think that Apple probably reluctantly even entered it at the time that they did, because they always enter things late after everybody's already fumbled around with it. But the concept of spatial computing, they understand like. That's the one thing you respect about WWDC. They were very quick to point out what's machine learning, right? They're like, our machine learning algorithm does this.
They very specifically, and we're going to call it Apple Intelligence.
Right. Well,
wink, wink.
They distinguish between these technologies, and then they master them, right? They get the fundamentals right. And some of the use cases they're opening up. Anyways, that you have Watch OS that comes out. So they don't talk about AI forever. And then so their stocks. And then the word Apple Intelligence gets spoken by Tim Cook. And just absolute moonshot.
Somebody might have bought a big chunk of Apple recently, and that's why he's so in tune with where their stock is going.
I said it on the podcast in season 1. I said buy Apple. I said I bought Apple before Vision Pro.
And it has panned out for you.
Yeah, it's
because
panned
of
out.
that.
But the thing about Apple Intelligence is not many people knew what was coming. They knew that they've been talking to OpenAI, but the OpenAI thing got all the press.
Yeah.
So if you go watch the keynote, because they don't talk about the OpenAI piece is very secondary, and really what they talked about is doing something truly unique, which is on-device AI that links all your personal information securely on your so that your notes, your email. Like for the first time, I think I might install the Mail app again.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking, because one of the examples they had was your mom sends you her itinerary, her flight itinerary, and you want to say, how's my mom's flight, or is it on time? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's awesome if Siri actually had context to but do I have to get their email app?
Well, wait, hold on. What do you mean you have to you want to install the new iOS app Mail app again?
I've deleted the Mail app from my phone since the beginning.
You use Mail?
I fucking use Mail.
Mail sucks.
What do you mean it sucks? I get my email. I can reply to my email. What do you use?
Says the guy that's on like 8 Slack channels and like panning through different.
Are you using Gmail?
You sound like sound like an Android user.
Yeah, dude,
come on. Right now.
No, the Mail app. The Mail
sir?
app is horrendous, and it's always been bad.
I want that short clip published. By the way.
Wait. So do you guys not use the Mail app on Mac OS?
No.
What do you use?
I use Gmail.
I use Superhuman.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Superhuman.
It is so fast.
Superhuman's amazing.
It's keyboard driven.
Gmail, fuck you. Like,
Gmail's
are
great.
you? No, it's not. It's garbage.
Superhuman just did come out with their AI stuff, and I haven't fooled around with this too much.
How much are you?
So Superhuman actually was talked about in the Apple keynote.
Oh.
Because part of Apple's AI is the app intents piece. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have seen this, but you've been able to order Starbucks through a push notification, right? For a while now. Starbucks is probably one of the most iOS progressive apps ever made. They take advantage of all the new APIs. Like if when you get the order ready, it doesn't come in a regular push notification. It comes up in this nice interstitial thing. So they take advantage of all the new things. Well, app intents is how they're going to replace all these auto GPT apps.
What's the app intents? You mentioned that
app
the other
intents
day.
is an API that they've created that they're using for Apple Intelligence for you to be able to do things, not just get information, but actually do things. So if someone says, "Hey, hey Siri, order me Uber Eats and get me
cancel.
Get me
Sorry.
Did it do it?
Yeah, of course it doesn't.
Dumbass Siri.
Damn it.
She's here.
All of a sudden, we're going to have 14 coffees delivered to our fucking studio.
Well, she's been listening this whole time. But app intents is actually and I know we're skipping ahead a little bit, I think is absolutely game changing in this whole announcement.
Yeah.
Which is they're creating these APIs that exist inside of their apps. So they have the new APIs really come down to 2 major things, I think. Well, they have their writing APIs, so you can rewrite your emails. Duh. Okay, by Grammarly, right?
Not in Gmail.
No, of course.
That's right. It's all text areas.
It's any iOS based control. So if they are actually developing things, with those controls, they'll be able to use them. But they also have Image Playground. So Image Playground is an interesting thing. So it knows what you and all your friends look like. So I text you and I'm like, hey, let's send me a picture or send James a picture of me and him drinking beers after the podcast, right? And it'll send a picture of us and it'll look like us. And it'll have that caricature.
Right.
But then those are built into all the other apps. So you can go into Notes and make a sketch and then highlight it and go Image Playground this, and then it'll create, and you have 3 different options. I think it's animation, illustration, or something else.
Right.
So you have Image Gen is bye-bye all those other
Right.
image gen
Midjourney
platforms.
and-
Yeah,
Last
they're all
show
done.
we talked about how many AI startups were around image generation and how many there was hundreds.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
on that.
Oh,
list
it
that
was
you
the number
found.
one. The number one. Yeah, good point. I didn't even think about that. The number one most polluted area of AI products was image and video. And when I say polluted, just I guess diluted. Those are
right.
presumptuous, but there's the most products exist in those spaces. But then you have the app intense piece. The app intense piece is it works with Apple app to Apple app. So like they'll talk to each other, but then you can actually do things, and that's really what makes a difference.
Yeah.
Is the ability to not only just like get information from an LLM
Yeah.
or consolidate all your personal data, but then actually go do something in the real world.
I mean, you talk that on this episode we want to talk about product strategy, and that's like key to product strategy for any mobile app right now, right? How do you tap into that system, get the right keywords, get the right phrasing, educate your audience on what to say to trigger you through Siri, make sure you got those use cases locked down. I mean, now's the time to be jumping on that bandwagon as fast as possible.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of that Rabbit
R1.
the R1, where it's
Bye
like,
bye Rabbit.
So the Rabbit R1, did you check that one out? And it was basically using Puppeteer and like trying to like visual. There was some sort of visual aspect of it, or they were just giving it to scripts or whatever to run. But this is a native way to interact with applications, and this is more moat for Apple, right? Like Apple had push notifications and had all their features that eventually get to the web, and like it's not as unique to Apple's platform, but if you can do things like that natively inside of Apple's apps, I mean, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. We should go build something with it right
Well,
now.
no.
So I was just looking. Apparently, it's only going to be available on the 15 Pros, and maybe I assume the 16.
Well,
and the
this
16
this
Pros.
comes down
Because
to the
it
question
needs
I have
shit.
for everybody,
It needs the Bionic 17 or an M1
which is only available on
the Pro,
latest.
the latest 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max.
Well, there you go. There's your reason to buy a new iPhone.
Well,
'Cause it
but
used to be,
that's what it is.
Yeah.
right?
So Apple's stock has gone up almost $20 in the last 3 or 4 days.
three
But-
point something trillion.
They passed Microsoft for a minute to get to 3.7 trillion market cap. But so I went last night and I was like, I wonder what they're doing, because I used to watch Fast Money on CNBC every day back when I was in college. That's just the thing we did. But they
Just the thing we
they're
did.
talking about the Fed, and the rates, and they get to Apple.
You can't get any dates, so what else are you going to do, right? Like,
No, absolutely
you
not.
got to go watch the finance news.
And these guys are funny, right? They're all on fundamentals. They're extremely intelligent. But they pan around. They're like, Apple up a million bajillion, and you can tell these guys did not lock in.
Right.
Like they didn't. They're all sitting there with FOMO, and they're like, it's going back to 200. I don't understand. This is not gonna. So they immediately go from AI to, are people gonna buy more iPhones?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the only thing that the market's reacting to right now with Apple is, are people going to buy more iPhones? And my question to the group is, like, some smart money's buying and going super long on Apple, like to the amounts of billions and billions of dollars. What are the pundits missing that the market is speaking to?
I have now a reason to so I have a 14 base, right? And now I went from an iPhone 8 Plus, I think the 8 Plus is what I had, and that thing was great. It worked forever. I didn't really have a reason to update. Eventually, the new operating system came out. I was like, I need to upgrade, so I got the 14. 14's been great. I have no reason to upgrade. It's been more than, but now I'm like, son of a bitch. I was like, I need to go. And so most likely what I'll do, I assume that the 16 will be able to support all of this. Like the base 16, right? Not the 16 plus but this is a good way for them to basically be able to get everybody to upgrade, because it's getting harder and harder to make a very good case of why I need to upgrade. Because again, the 14 has been more than enough horsepower for everything that I do.
That's why their stock, I think, has been beaten down the last couple of years. Is like that people just haven't been upgrading as much. As
there
often.
hasn't been a good reason. I think this is a good reason to do it.
I that may be true. I have a different view, I guess.
Yeah.
I think this is a services play and a eco play long term. So right now, what percentage of money does Apple make from the App Store? 30% of, sorry, what percent of their revenue?
I don't know, but it's the only growth. It's their biggest growing product, if you will.
So, but what they just did was, instead of making ChatGPT.com your entry point to AI, Siri is going to be your entry point to AI for mass audiences. Now, right now, that does point to ChatGPT. Probably won't 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You combine that with their app intents, the intentions part, well, now you're just plugging into e-commerce. What percentage of automatic AI-based e-commerce are they going to own 5 years from now? How do you get into that? Through the App Store, through the app payment process. Like, they're going to be like own the ecosystem, and that's not even touching the data part of this, right? How do you make a better AI? Well, you need to understand what everyone's asking. What do people want out of AI? And you need to log that. Now, sure, they're all privacy oriented, but somewhere, some point, they're going to be getting data on what people want out of AI, and they're going to have more of that data than anybody else.
Right.
And then
Ding,
long
ding,
term,
ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. 100%.
Yeah.
Because Apple's AI is, not only are they killing a bunch of other startups, they're taking in the entry point, and that's important. So James is right. The issue isn't, where's the revenue coming from? That they'll figure that out like they always do, right? It is a services play, and I feel bad for all these other entry points and other pieces that are going to die.
Yeah.
But like, Apple's going to give this shit away for free.
It's kind of what we talked about last week, which was, ChatGPT was the best UI to give access and accessibility, but it was never probably going to be the thing. Like, what do we use every single day? It's our phone. And who's the best phone producer in the world? It's Apple, Google's good too, and Windows. Do they still have
Kinda.
Does Windows
But did
still-
you see they even spent the time to make Siri cooler? So now when you press the side button, it's this cool like loading animation that
Yeah.
goes around the rim of your phone.
Yeah.
And it's super legit.
It's like in a show
my
where
phone
there's a
went.
beard, so that time has passed. Like they gotta make Siri different, so it's better now.
So I think in conclusion, I think that Apple will have a bigger refresh cycle because of Apple Intelligence, and supported by this. I mean, how good are they at layering in? Okay, we're going to introduce all these new chips. We're going to own the entire production cycle stack when it comes to building these chips. We're going to own the chips. Okay, then we're going to build an AI into our software, and then we're going to literally take over all these people that are trying to get people to go to their website to use AI, go into ChatGPT to use AI. Every single AI transaction is going to run through our phones.
Also, something I think James pointed out that was a really good point is they didn't jump to trying to make they're not jumping to make a model today. Apple waited.
Right.
They're gonna let everyone else figure out how to make the models the best way. Get what's happening right now. NVIDIA is building better chips. The processes are getting easier. We're understanding how to make the best model better. Then they'll invest big time in it. And I bet you in 5 years or less. You're right.
But with their integrated play, they're going to have a huge leg up. Like, you probably know more about the technicals of LLMs than I do, but when Apple changes their chip in a way that makes their AI better long term, and Google can't match that the same way they can't match a lot of other abilities right now.
Yeah.
At the hardware side, like, could be a very big reason to buy an
That's a really
iPhone
good
a few
point,
years from now, right?
Yeah.
They can have that integrated play in a way that other phone makers can't do.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that a kind of a long-term strategy you've seen from Apple? Is they kind of won with software, right? But then they kind of came around, and then now they're winning with hardware.
Yeah.
And I know their stuff always was good, but they were relying on Intel. They were they were building fancy like screens and all that. But fundamentally, they're actually charging way ahead.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Yeah, I do think that so I've been watching this one, and I can't remember their name, but it's a company who's basically using human brain cells to be able to form these kind of new chips that are like this hybrid human chip hardware play. They're like these little humanoid nodule things, and apparently they've got like they start forming like little black eyes and stuff that they. It's. I think the company like that is going to come out of nowhere and basically just be able to completely decimate NVIDIA. Right, and it's going to be like, yep, we've got these new chips. These are all completely different avenue. Because again, what NVIDIA is doing with their chips is just insane. What Apple's doing with their chips is absolutely insane. Someone's going to come up with a whole new breed of like biological chips that Apple ends up
and
buying.
you're going to be able to send memes to your friends like never before.
That was the feature that I was most excited about was the emoji generator.
Oh, dude, Genmoji is amazing. You can create any emoji ever.
Right.
I'm gonna create
How many
some,
eggplant emojis are going to get created in the next 6 months?
The first thing
Sean
I thought
riding a
of.
triceratops. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. I'm excited for that. That's like the stupidest thing.
I've been looking for it because I installed it as soon as it came out. I'm like, all right, I go and I install it on my phone. I can't find any of these features. Like, I've got the ability to make my home screen extremely ugly now, right? Like, I can make all the colors green and I can make everything like black and green and all this, and it's gnarly as hell. Steve Jobs is rolling over in his grave because he never would have let humans
he would have never let that
customize the design of their phone because they're a bunch of idiots. So I'm, but yeah, I installed it thinking, okay, I'm going to be all excited for 18's beta, and like I got nothing because I don't have a 15, so all those features are basically just cut off for me. So it's like there's no difference between iOS 17 and iOS 18.
Well, it's buy the hype, sell the news, and for some reason, people think that an announcement at a developer conference is news. Apple will have the real test will be when this all gets into users' hands and they're actually using it.
Right.
So.
And you're just powering through whatever amount of tokens.
That's a great point. Let's not forget how badly Apple fucked up Siri in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, we beach about it almost
Constantly.
every
Every episode we're bitching about Siri.
Fucking useless.
It
Yeah.
is 100%. Yeah. So I am hopeful that we get to a point where I was hopeful that Siri with this version would have just been better, right? But now it seems like I'm going to have to like ask Siri a question. It might go like, I don't know, but I'll hand you off to GPT, and then you have to approve that. Eventually, I hope that all happens on device.
In the Apple, in the latter half of that keynote, they demoed the Siri updates, and she was absolutely waiting for a response. There was no zero latency. There was no discussion of it. That's not in play. They haven't done it, and that is going to be a huge weakness for Apple because the zero latency chat piece that got demoed by OpenAI a few weeks ago was the most impressive
I'm
thing
still
I've
waiting
seen.
for it though. I continually launch in my ChatGPT.
It's not there.
And I go and I hit that microphone icon, and I'm just waiting to see if I eventually get it, but I haven't had access to it
So
yet.
I met with an entrepreneur yesterday, and he introduced me to some cool tech they're working on. Fixie.ai. Have you guys heard of this?
What is it?
It's Fixie.
Fixie?
Fixie.
How do you spell that?
FIXIE.ai.
Okay.
And they're doing voice only LLM. So no text. It's not voice to text to voice. It's voice only. Zero latency is their goal. The team behind it are the guys who created like WebRTC, which like Zoom runs on, all that kind of stuff. So that is what they're doing. They have a website, ai.town. Yes, .town is the TLD there.
No kidding.
Yeah.
.town?
.town. It's a website full of characters, different kinds of people. You bring it up, and you can text, or you can call the character. You can call a chef and talk to a chef. You can call.
Hold on.
Like, we're on a podcast, right?
Okay, so
we should call live.
We're gonna call somebody. We've got an angry boomer.
Let's call the angry boomer.
Or we're gonna call the angry boomer. Let's call him.
Turn up your volume.
But think about this. We're on a podcast right now, and we're spouting words of wisdom and intelligence, and that's why people listen to us. Soon you don't have to listen to yesterday's podcast. You can call the AI today and talk to him or her.
Angry boomer.
Sorry. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, we're gonna call it. Okay, hold on. Keep talking.
He's an angry boomer. He's on the golf course.
This is the thing. Like, you think about getting in your car and you're going for a drive, and right now you turn on a podcast. What if you call a historian instead, or an economist, or a market analyst, and you just simply have a conversation with that person, like a live interaction where they're looking up data in Wikipedia and giving you instant, zero latency, up-to-date information, and you're just talking. And every time they say, well, you got a new question, so you go down a new rabbit hole. And instead of like listening to podcasts, it's almost like you're in a podcast asking the guest question, and they're a subject matter expert on everything in the world.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about that first season? And then we thought that was like a pie in the sky, never would happen kind of thing.
Yeah, but also like, every road trip I ever go on, I'll think of the dumbest questions, it's like shower thoughts. And I'm just like, I saw a zebra one time in Kentucky, and I was like, why is there a zebra in Kentucky? So I went to Google, and we're like trying to hunt it down. We eventually found it out. This dude just had a zebra farm. But like that would be very exciting for me, because that's my favorite thing to do when I drive, is to just look up random shit.
Do you need luck over there?
No, I'm now put into this weird chat interface. I'll figure out.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Anyways, we had a couple other things we wanted to talk about in terms of the AI side.
Yep.
The Amazon is thirsty for people to use their products, and so they're literally begging people. Like, what's going on?
So
with them?
they just announced a $230 million investment in AI, which essentially most of it's earmarked for credits, AWS credits for startups and AI companies to use their platform. They obviously want people to build AI on their platform on AWS and spend gobs and gobs of money consuming their GPUs that they're hosting. They're also, inside of the article was a mention of their model that they're training. And did you guys see that research paper?
Olympus?
Yeah, Olympus. And so,
Of course, it's named Olympus.
Yeah.
I know. Right.
yeah, so I forget all the numbers, but they're
It's crazy. It's like 4 trillion.
yeah.
Is like this model that they're building, and they spent $186 million or something crazy on it.
And there was a couple on there. So basically, they said it'll be in the next couple of years that there's going to be a $1 billion cost to train the next model.
Right.
So in the next couple of years, we're going to be throwing so much hardware, spending so much time, and it took like 45 days to train it.
It was 45 days to train the whole thing.
I knew that this was complicated and expensive, but I guess I just...
Could you imagine getting to like day 40 and like having something go wrong?
That reminds me,
So when it's doing that, like, what's actually happening?
I think literally they're just burning the entire energy of New York as it's sitting there doing its mathematical calculations for 48 days.
So it's just what? It's just vectorizing a shit ton of data?
I think that's all it's doing. Now, when we say that's all it's doing, there's obviously a bunch of black magic that's happening with these people who are fucking geniuses that are making this all happen. But yeah, I literally think it's just burning the energy of the sun for 48 days.
That makes me worried, because I feel like 48 days is not very long.
That's what I was thinking.
For like top level models.
for building like a super intelligence.
Right, OpenAI spends months on their stuff.
Right.
I agree with that. Like, there's two things that can be true. One, 48 days is a long time for something to just build, because we used to have this joke with Webpack where it would get to like 78%
88% chunk assets.
Yeah, and it would freeze and
Right,
die. So could you imagine on day 47 where you're like, uh-oh, locked up on me? But first of all, it's like both a long time and also not that long a time to create a brand new model. And then you can just throw more hardware at it and more data, and then 2 months later you can have the next model.
Well, I mean, again, we're talking product strategy, and like, what if you invest 48 days in building a model? Like, you go to your bosses at AWS, and they're like, hey, give me 48 days and the power of New York and 180 million. To like, yeah, sure. And it comes out and it's great. And then a week later, someone builds a model that's 10% better.
Right.
And you're just like, fuck. like your model is almost like...
That's where I think that we talked about this. This is probably the thing we've talked about so much, more than anything is that where's the commodity? Is the commodity in the software and the UI, or is the commodity in the model?
Right.
And we've gone back and forth with OpenAI because their models have been coming out, and it appears that their models are great. When DALL-E first came out, we were like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? I'm making all this stuff, and then I probably churned, or whatever. But I think that where we've been centering around is probably that the models are a little bit of the commodity, and the user network effect, and the user the interface and the way to get to it and apply the technologies is the moat.
I think the moat, I guess I'll put the moat elsewhere. I think the moat, when you're thinking about AI strategy from almost any perspective, the moat is your data.
Yeah.
What data do you have that someone else doesn't have?
Yeah.
Because you're right. The models are going to be commodities. You can put any model on any data, but like what data do you have that your competition doesn't have? And again, if we go back to our conversation about Apple's AI intelligence, they're going to be getting the most data, and that's a huge win for them. So when I talk to companies about their strategy, I'm like, what data do you have?
Yeah.
If you don't have it, how can you get it before your competitors figure out they need it?
Well, and then I agree with that. And we just had a conversation today, and it was all about, oh, you have this unique data that I've never seen before. You guys are creating this unique data. But then you get to the board of directors, and they're like, do not let us get hacked. Do not have a data leak, right? Because now you're talking about, and they're like, well, we can't send, like, they're all like, don't send our data to OpenAI, right? But we've been happy to host our data in AWS for 10, 15 years.
Right.
I'm sure. You think they're not doing something with that?
Yeah.
Like, so that's always been a question to me is okay, so is AWS going to be a good place for that, for those kind of those data-driven products?
I think they will be, and the reason is because they make very specific claims of not training on your data. And so that's one of my clients was an insurance client here in Indianapolis that they've just said, okay, we're going to go full on with AWS and Bedrock, all of the models that they've had their security team basically go and try to evaluate everything and say, yeah, this is where we're going to have it. So I think that I don't think that they're going to necessarily be training on other people's or on the data that's coming in because it's just not part of their thing. OpenAI says they're not either. So OpenAI is like, yeah, we're not training on users' data. Again, like this is their CEO who couldn't explain where the training data for what's the image?
You can't.
Oh yeah.
You
Sora.
cannot
Or video.
trust
Yeah.
OpenAI's
Sora.
claims to privacy and
Right.
security when their privacy and security team all just either
Just
left or got fired.
Yeah, that's right. The
they literally
alignment team
tried
were just
to
all bolted.
coup Sam Altman
Right.
off the board for violating the core mission
Yeah.
of the company,
Yeah.
which was one of the reasons why Elon Musk was upset. If he's just having some ulterior motive or not is a different question. But there's no doubt that OpenAI completely forked away from their original company's mission and vision, and to the detriment of the relationship with some of their core engineering founders.
Yeah, no, agreed.
So
I'm curious long term about how AWS fits in from a latency perspective. So right now, if you want to work with OpenAI, you send out a GET request or post or whatever, HTTP request off to OpenAI, and then you wait for the response.
Right.
That's significant latency. Now AWS they're going to put their model on the machine sitting right next to your network, right? It's going to be edge to edge in every single data center. And sure, OpenAI is going to raise their hand like, hey, AWS, can we do that too? And probably AWS will say no.
Yeah.
So you think about the round trip latency of if you're doing anything of a real-time nature, chatbots.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting
So
leg
you
up.
heard it here first. Apple wins the personal AI race, and AWS potentially wins the B2B software AI race.
The only I would counter with Cloudflare might be positioned to do some damage there as well. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying that the winners of if you're trying to build applications with AI built in and leveraging these models, your users aren't going to wait the 2 seconds it takes or whatever.
I think the premise here is latency, which is what you just said, which I totally agree with, because everyone's going to be like, the answer's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want it fast.
Yeah.
That's what. So that's the one client that I have. Just tons of unstructured data. Basically, that's what I've been trying to task with is try to use these large language models to take this unstructured data, turn it into some sort of a structured format that they can work with. AWS is the only place they'll work with.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, from a business perspective.
Yeah, just because, they've gone through it, they've seen their things, and they're all happy with it. They're like, yep, go ahead, and you guys can just use it. But can't use, Azure, can't use OpenAI, but you can only use Bedrock.
Yeah, because everyone's AWS instances are so locked down from a security perspective. No, just wide open keys sitting out
of
there.
Course not. No, not at all.
No.
Yeah. Well, so going to my point then was talking about companies and what they're doing with their data is Adobe. So Adobe this week blew up. Everybody got all pissed off with them because they rolled out some new terms of service that basically said, and I mean it literally basically said that we basically own all of your designs. Like we can do whatever we want with your designs. Now, everybody who read this
Sure.
was like, well, you're just using this to train your AI models. And so that's what blew up in the news cycle. And they're like, no, not at all. Like, we don't care about that. So Firefly, which is their image generator, is trained on only Adobe-owned assets. And so that's kind of their claim to fame, is that their models are only trained on licensed material that Adobe owns. And so if you would happen to get sued, they'll go on your behalf and they will fight and they'll do it because, again, they know that they have not trained on anything but things that are owned. However, when you actually read the terms of service, and I did this, and I actually had ChatGPT extract it because I wanted to bring it up, and that it, there literally says that Adobe users grant Adobe a non-exclusive, worldwide, royalty-free license to use, reproduce, publicly display, distribute, modify, and create derivative works from the content uploaded to their service. Okay? So everybody kind of loses their mind. Rightfully fucking so. Right? Like everybody's like, well, hold on. They're like, no. We're not training your AI. So they write this long blog post. They're like, we're going to update our terms. We're not training your data we're not training our AI on your data. And we won't ever really go and take your content. Again, I don't care what a blog post says. I want to know what the terms of service says, and it very clearly states that we can use your content for whatever ultimately that we want.
Well,
and
did they update the terms of service after they started doing this or before?
No,
because usually they call the lawyer and say, hey, we don't do
well,
this,
so they've been writing these blog posts. So then today I was like, I went and I found their general terms of service. I took that, I throw it into ChatGPT. I said, all right, I want to talk about this. So right now, that thing that I just read is what's currently on their terms of service today.
Now, is that Adobe.com?
It's Adobe.com, their general terms. So this isn't even broken down to the individual. Every product that they have has their own terms. This is their general terms.
I feel like those are pretty standard terms, though.
They
for
might,
like most websites that let you upload things.
They might be. Okay. However, that's a problem, right? Because again, as a creative who's creating things within Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever, they're basically saying that they have the right to take that and reproduce it and make derivative works of it however they see fit. That's a problem, right? Like that's just so for me personally,
it'd be like the paintbrush manufacturer telling Bob Ross they own
exactly
all his
they own his paintings. So for me, like when Creative Cloud first came out, I installed it, read the terms of service, realized that they were trying to basically upload my entire Brandon Corbin home drive to the cloud because that's how their business model was. I'm like, I'm fucking done. I've been using Photoshop since version 2.0 because 1.0 wasn't even really a thing, right? So I've been an Adobe. I was there for the migration from Claris to Adobe. Like I've been an Adobe guy, and
I was a Macromedia guy.
Freehand anytime. Macromedia freehand was better than Illustrator, no question, right? Like I was a freehand guy, and I finally reluctantly became an Illustrator guy. Once that all went down, I left them. I uninstalled all of it. I went to Affinity Designer, Affinity Photo, whatever I think it's called, Affinity Photo, for my alternates. And I've been Adobe free now for about 8 years. But now everybody's starting to go, oh yeah, these guys it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
And that's that. There is no counter argument.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Regardless of if it's probably a standard practice.
Yeah.
To do that, just because they.
But people are hyper.
But people wouldn't assume that was.
I also think that there's never been a use case like this to leverage our data.
Right.
And we probably, to your point, this probably is a standard operating procedure for an agreement, but it was like, what are they going to do with my drawing? Nothing. They can't.
Right.
And now it's like they could.
Can. Yeah.
They can literally replace people, or
100%.
reproduce their work. They're saying they can do it legally.
I think this is a hard time to be at like a giant tech company like that.
Yeah.
From this perspective, you're under enormous pressure to create a model that's better than everyone else's model, to move your business along with AI, and the only way to make a better model is to get better input data, more of it. And you see OpenAI do this, where they legally or illegally, we'll let the courts work that out, crawl and scrape every data source, public, private, they could find. And if you're Adobe and you're sitting on a giant pile of data, if you're Facebook, you're sitting on a giant pile of data, like tapping into that could be really big for you
Well, didn't
guys.
Facebook
So
say fuck everybody?
Oh, yeah,
Facebook
yeah.
literally
Facebook
had the
absolutely
same thing where they said we're going to take your data unless you opt out of it, and to opt out of it, it's not the easiest. I mean, it's not that hard, but it's an opt out.
Right.
It's not an opt in.
But,
yeah.
but,
Did they
but,
change
like, I
that, or
don't
they-
care. Like, I don't care that they want to use my stupid ass
but-
jokes
but-
about
but
Facebook.
see, that's you don't get to make that decision, right? You don't get to say that. Oh, my dumb jokes are up for bid, but my precious designs are
Right.
But
You know, at
also,
the
it's
end of the-
not just your jokes. It's how long did you stop and look at an image?
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
very, very
they'll
true.
know
Right.
you better
Yeah,
than you know
exactly.
you, and then they'll start.
Like
they'll
this
be
guy,
your
this
therapist.
guy's interested in all sorts of
He
wild
is screwed
shit.
up. We need to get him off the internet.
This goes back to my standard dystopian AI argument, which is there's 4 companies that win, and they all are going to hit $5 trillion plus market cap in the next 3 or 4 years. And everyone else, if you're not learning Swift right now, I think that you're probably
I
mistaken.
did like whatever you shared today, where I'm like, I'm pretty certain he's trying to tell me I need to learn more Swift.
that interaction.
I
I was
did.
like, it's totally subtweeting you on that.
Yeah, totally. I'm
But
like, oh, yeah.
but it's like, if you don't leverage, if you don't get on board, it's going to be tough for you because I just don't. I think that they just continue to keep eating and eating and eating, and maybe it's more of the unique, non-commoditized aspects. Like, don't go try to build a random avatar image generation tool. There's 600 of those out in the market. Maybe try to go build a B2B thing that's leveraging company data, something that Apple doesn't want to touch.
Right.
Apple wants to touch 1 billion people at once, not 2,000 or something somebody's gonna build a $5 million company. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the opportunities here, I think, are for businesses that have that data or can get that data, because AI lets you do a few things that you could not do before. You can transform data and translate data and label things and categorize things, and things being text, video, images, sound, cameras, any weird source of data that until now you had to be Adobe.
Yep.
You had to have an entire team of PhDs to build a model around. Now you don't. It's commoditized. And I think it's going to be in a race over the next 5 years to figure out if the incumbents who are currently in the big B2B space transform their services into AI versus the startups who are all going to be leveraging AI can get enough sales and get enough data to compete against them.
Right.
But I think if the big guys work with AI first, whatever that means for their business, they're going to win. Yeah. I think this is almost like most things in tech these days, the incumbents are winning. And I think AI builds on top of that because it's so data centric.
Right.
So
going back to my one client that I've got, so they're an insurance company. They've been around for 1,000 years or whatever it's been. The one thing that they have is 20 to 30 years of unstructured data. That's where the AI can just come in and absolutely just give them a huge leg up. So I've been working with that data set, and I'm like, so part of my thing is to be able to go take these unstructured data and to be able to extract meaning from it, right? And these LLMs are phenomenal at it, right? So we're using Claude Opus, go in and basically say, here's the structure. I want you to take this completely unstructured data format and turn it into a structured data format, right? And it outputs, and then boop, boop, boop. All of a sudden now you've got this, 30 years of data that's been unstructured into a structured thing in 30 seconds. I mean, that's insanely valuable for these companies.
I'm doing the same thing with the client on let's call it customer records.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Yep.
Unstructured data that until now was unquantifiable.
Right.
Now it can be quantified.
Yep.
You can do sentiment analysis. You can measure changes over time in the customer's record and measure the impact of your service in a way that was previously unmeasurable unless you were a giant enterprise corporation.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a game changer for companies like that.
Yep.
That's amazing. And that reminds me of an Amazon feature that I just noticed the other day that's amazing. It's what I've always wanted, but at the top of product review, right? I have a problem where I have to go read like 100 reviews, and is there anything in common or anyone complaining about the same thing? Well, they just give you the overview now, the sentiment analysis of all the comments and reviews, and it says, it's so valuable. People say it's a good bang for its buck, but it lacks here. I'm like, oh shit. that's amazing.
Perfect.
Now I can make a really good informed purchasing decision on this product. And that's what I love about.
So before Big Cheese came out of a thing called Interview Plan. So Interview Plan was the thing that I started to build, which was my first I'm gonna try to make recruiting better using AI, where you can go and you can build an interview plan, and then you can basically interview people and track it and do summarize and all this kind of stuff. But what was kind of interesting about it is as I was going through and building all of this, oh shit, I completely just lost my train of thought.
Unstructured data.
Unstructured data.
Sentiment analysis.
Completely gone. Completely gone. Gone. This is ADHD, my friends. This is the way that you get to work. Get all excited about an idea. You're like, don't lose track. And then it's just gone. Anyway.
Mark that as an edit point.
Interview plan. No, he won't. It's all right. It's fine. Interview plan. I'll come back to it. Go ahead and talk.
I was talking to Wes Winham Woven earlier this week, and I'm not sure how much I can share publicly about what he's working on.
Right.
But he's working on some AI stuff in sort of that field, in the technical recruiting field, and they're coming up with some really cool tech. And I guess back to our earlier points about data, what they're doing is pulling in sources of data that they have that other people don't have, as well as external data. And then you're able to take 1 + 1 = 3, and then you add AI on that, and you're like 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. And like you're creating value out of something that was previously unstructured, not valuable. There's a lot of opportunities for the next few years to do things no one's ever done before. I saw a fascinating someone I used to work with now at Google. Google did a thing with what city was this? I'm going to say Memphis. I could be wrong. Memphis. And all over Memphis, there's cars with cameras. There's the police cars. There's city cars. There's all this stuff. So they have all these cameras of the streets. And then Google went and ran all that through an AI, and they found all the potholes. And now they have now it takes them about 10 days to get a camera on every city or on every street in the city. But they have a 10-day lag on every single damn pothole in the entire city. Then you layer that on a map, and now you're a lot more intelligent about how you fix your potholes, which helps you get reelected. And that's data we never had before. One of the stats they quoted in there, when they fill potholes in cities today, only 10% of those potholes are reported by people like you and me, by citizens who call and complain because the pothole's so giant big. The other 90% are just potholes they fix when the pothole crews drive around to fix them.
Well, and that's cool because there's probably a big cost advantage to that, where you're getting to them before they become a huge problem,
right?
And get washed out and driven over 100 times or whatever. That's awesome.
And that's all. Like, they didn't do anything new.
Yeah.
They didn't. Yeah. I don't think they added cameras.
Well, and that's a great point. Is like when you're thinking about how to add AI into your product, the first thing you think of is, how do I add on? I need a new thing. It's got to be new and shiny. But the reality is, there's just so much opportunity in existing functionality and features that you can improve, enhance through AI.
Yeah.
And with data.
So the data I think is absolutely key. That these companies, like, if you've got a bunch of data, no matter what format it's in, then you can transform that into something that is insanely valuable, and you can leverage that to turn into a lot of cash.
I think one of the, I guess, moving on from that a little bit, one of the things that we're not there yet, I don't feel like, you guys correct me if you see something I don't, is I don't think we're on anywhere close to where we're going to be on the automation front, which is the other advantage, is you can take that data and you can somehow turn it and automate it.
So we did research, it was last week actually, and we basically cross-referenced the most diluted AI categories for products. And then we cross-referenced that with the most popular products. And the union of that was the products that had the most popularity but the least amount of products built for them, right? And the top three, three of the top five were related to AI girlfriends. But the one little shining little diamond in the rough was AutoGPT. Yeah. And that was the concept of automating things from the inputs and outputs of AI. Right. And that's where I think we go back to the Apple thing.
Right.
Is from a pure mobile perspective, right? Apple just figured that out. But that's not everything. That doesn't mean they integrate with every EDI and API you know what I mean, platform. And I think
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean?
But every one of those APIs now needs to make sure they have an Apple app.
Oh,
In a world
exactly.
maybe they didn't before. And then again, we go back to data. And who has all the app intent data that no one else has?
They do.
Yeah.
Apple's going to have it all. They're going to know how it all interfaces.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir on that one.
This,
I mean,
this reminds me of something we've been saying for a very long time is AI will drive protocols. It'll drive
Yep.
standardization of data so that it can actually do these
Do the things with
automations much more effectively. And
Right.
Apple's the one who's kind of taking the lead on it. But we've mentioned Google's product API for a long time, where it's like in the search you can buy the thing from the e-commerce site. But I mean, yeah, we'll probably wake up in 5 years and a plumber can get on a website and say, build me an automation to text my customer after a service call. And it's like, okay, boom.
So Apple's so unique in the fact that of how they approach their problems. But one of the things that they do is they make unbelievable things that no one ever even notices. Like my daughter comes up to me yesterday and she goes, I've been wanting to show you this all day, Dad. And so she takes my phone and she unlocks it, and she knows how to do this. She's 11, and she goes, do you want to use this shuffle feature? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, well, I know that you love your little wallpapers that you put on your phone. And she's like, well, you can do a shuffle. Have you guys seen it?
Oh, yeah.
My wife tells everybody about this thing.
Okay, yeah, so the
Like,
shuffle.
yeah.
And so she goes into my phone, and of course, it was just this selfish move. She went in, found the shuffle, tuned it so it only shows pictures of her. And then she went and picked the one. I think you can even pick some of the ones that you want to train it on.
She picked the good ones.
Or she picked the good ones, and she switched my wallpaper thing. And then she just handed it back to me. She's like, now you just get to see a different picture of me every single time you pick up your phone.
Do you have other kids?
Yeah, I have 2 others.
Okay, so yeah, this is genius. So
Yeah.
Your other kids are gone. It's just her now.
Right, no, the whole thing was that, first of all, she wasn't the featured person, and my kids really take that personally. Like when I'll switch it randomly, but like if they pick up the phone and it's Maverick, it's not Maya or Michael, right? Like they're like whatever.
Hey.
But the point of that story is that Apple's technology is so ubiquitous, and it's so tested and hardened, and their patterns are so. Their culture's been layered upon layered upon layered upon layered upon us so long, right? That it's like it's in everything that they do is inevitable, right? And if you go back to the WWDC conversation, they introduce so many things that either they're perfecting something that someone else couldn't get to market, or they're introducing a totally new concept. Right. That it's just hard to think about a scenario where these guys aren't going to be your main interface to so many different technologies from here to God knows when.
What did you see the calculator?
That
was amazing.
Texas Instruments has got to be like, all right, what the hell? Their
that was
TI-86 has been on the market for 100
the
years.
first part, so I was watching during that moment so they go, all new for the iPad, a calculator. And I thought they were joking.
Yeah,
I was
It
like,
seems so dumb at first.
it seems so dumb at first, but only Apple would wait 12 years to build the calculator
for the iPad.
because they're like, you know what? We're not just going to enlarge the screen.
Right.
We're not doing that. We're not going to make the E and all those stupid
right.
letter things that I don't even know what do. They're like, no, we're going to swipe to this new screen, and you're going to be able to sketch out entire mathematical
That was very
problems.
cool. That was a very cool solution. Like when I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But man, like then following up afterwards, everybody was just like, oh my God, this is like really, really neat.
When she drew those 3 little pictures, and she had 3 variables sitting on the screen, and then she's like, oh, let me drag this logarithmic chart onto the screen, and all 3 of those variables are bound to the chart. And then she taps the number with the Apple Pencil, and it brings up a number dragging UI.
Right.
And she just drags her thing to the right, and it starts ticking up the numbers. I was like, stop.
Stop it.
I'm so excited for like the advances that kids and parents that are trying to help their kids with homework. Like I remember in high school, my physics teacher was like, "Hey, you can use MATLAB if you want. It's basically cheating if you know how to use MATLAB in physics." I didn't do it because I was like, this program's not approachable for me. But fast forward today, it's like they're making very approachable, easy to use programs that can do some advanced mathematics.
That's one of the biggest things that I have an issue with in the schooling system. So it's Apple products are expensive. Yeah. And kids in public schools, my kids go to public schools. Their school is one of the everybody loves their school. It's a high rated school, but it's a public school with state funding, and they use crappy Chromebooks that they've been passing around for the last 4 or 5 years, and that is not a good interface for learning. It's just not. I mean, the mouses, the thing doesn't move. They don't learn. They're not more productive on these tools. You give that same kid a MacBook Air or an iPad, and they're probably just watching YouTube videos quicker. You know what I mean?
But on a retina screen.
But like, you know what I mean? Like if you give those same kids, you know, you go over to Park Tutor, they got they guarantee they got iPad Pros and Apple Pencils, and they're just carving it up. You know what I mean?
I will say my kids are also in public school and they've had iPads, so fortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. So
They're younger, so maybe that's part of it. They're not actually typing yet.
but they need to get those kids on iPads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a little bit of a concern for me.
I want to go back to your comments a little bit about Apple, and I think you used the word bold. They're doing like bold things that other people couldn't do or haven't done yet, and I think that's an interesting angle to examine AI through, and the transformation the whole economy is going to go through with AI is the bold will win. It's interesting. Your client, the insurance company, is working so heavily with AI because I think most enterprise companies are scared to death. Unless they're a tech company, they're like, what about, there's a lot of risk, right? You got data leakage, you got bias problems, you've got all sorts of privacy issues, and let alone how you're using people's data. But if you're a medium-sized company and you just charge straight ahead and boldly figure out, so you know, maybe you make some twists and turns along the way to find the right path, but you could, there's going to be some winners and losers over the next few years, and I think the ones that are bold and figure out how to get it done and try it will ultimately be the early winners.
So I'll give a little insight into this insurance company that I've had now for like 8 years. They've been a client of mine. So part of the insurance, the problem with a lot of insurance is that you need to know when you should go try to collect money from the other party or not, right? And so it's called subrogation, and it's basically where we say they're at the other party was at fault. We should go try to collect some money for the accident or whatever happened. And what we're trying to do is we're basically taking, so they have their insurance claims adjusters and all that. They're just basically taking these notes, writing them in just plain text. And so now we're using large language models to basically take that text out, identify who was really at fault, were there any force majeures, was there any act of gods that were involved, you know, what all things. And these large language models are actually really good at being able to extract the meaning, say, here's all the different drivers, here's the cars they were driving. I've now got a thing where I can go and I can like look up recalls for those type of cars and things like that to pull it in, because, you know, potentially a recall in a car that hasn't been adjusted could cause an accident. So then you need to go after Nissan because of that or whatever it might be. So these things are, I will say it's been very, especially like when I start talking to the people who've been doing this for like 20, 30 years, and I start kind of getting their thought processes of how they go through this, and I try to take that and I translate it into a prompt. And now next thing you know, you've got this prompt that you can basically give this document, you give it the prompt, and you come out and you'll be like, yep, this person's at fault, here's why, here's what it is, and blah, blah, blah. We just literally cut off 2, 3, 4 hours of their time to be able to use a large language model to study those notes than them doing it themselves, and it's magical. Yeah.
And 4.5 million people just lost their jobs.
We're going to lose a lot of jobs. The thing you didn't mention, and again, we were talking about this earlier, is automation, where like the languages can call functions.
Yeah.
Function calls are built into most of those things
the
now.
the next year.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to get crazy.
Yeah. I think that's the standards are being built now. It's about doing stuff with it, like, you know, switch the models out, whatever. But doing something with that data is very important. And I think for, you know, so we talked about Apple. I think the highlights is if you're just getting to what happened this week, go check out Image. Damn it, what it's called?
Image Genmoji.
No, Genmojis. So generate any emoji you want for the rest of your life.
I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
Image Playground.
Playground.
So Apple's Image Playground, which is built as an API and integrated into their core applications. You have the App Intents, which is something you've been able to use for a long time, but now it's integrating into Siri and AI, and developers can utilize these APIs now on the betas with Xcode, getting it into your apps ready for iOS 18. We talked about AWS and the fact that they're really investing heavily in getting people to start using their data and applications inside of AWS, which we think is a really
Did they have a name for that real quick? What are they calling that program that they're
dollars invested into
Yeah.
the business.
It's probably soming that sounds real similar to 3 other things.
Yeah.
that they all do. We should we'll
And don't trust Adobe, but if you're integrating AI into your product, think about the data plays. Think about what unique data you can provide, so that you can kind of navigate this and compete outside of the commodities and the things that are going to get consumed by big tech, like image generation, and just personal computing.
Yeah.
Right. So
And James, so you're doing AI consulting now. How can people find out more about what you're doing?
So I'm doing AI product strategy consulting. So I help companies figure out, to your earlier question, Jacob, how do we get new revenue? How do we expand existing products? How do we automate existing processes? All those things, transform our business. So it's jamespaden.com. Reach out to me. So primarily small, medium-sized existing companies, probably some tech companies, but anyone trying to just, if you're not full-time in this space, you miss a lot of the things we just talked about.
Exactly.
And I'm just helping come in there short-term, give a little helping hand, and then your full-time people can do the rest.
Awesome.
that's awesome. Well, this has been the BigCheese AI Podcast. We'll see you next week.